What? What do you want? What do you want, Potato? What do you want? I was gonna start streaming. We have a minor. Hey, hey. What do you want? All right, I guess I'll be right back. The ears, yes, the ears. I see the ears. Yes, Potato, what would you like? What do you want, buddy? Yeah? Okay, you can hang out there. Just don't chew wires and don't pull books off shelves. That's the deal. That's it. That's all you need. Please don't do those things. Cool. All right. Okay, well, we'll see. We'll see how well this works. Hey, Mark. Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. I hope everyone is having a wonderful time. As we continue our little week of charity stream thing. Yeah, so if you are interested, I was trying to make a deal with the dog. We'll see. He's generally not very good. You know, he'll sign on the dotted line and then just break his contract right away. He's horrible for that. Yeah, so I just want to say that if you are interested in donating to the Trevor Project, right now we have a nice low objective of $50, but you know, any amount is helpful. So giving to a good cause. We'll see if we're effective at this. If we are, then we will do something like a semi-annual or quarterly week like this, where we pick a an appropriate charity and just try and see if we could raise some money for the charity. Yeah, so that is what we're doing. I will otherwise not go into a spiel about it. If you're interested in the charity itself, you can look it up. The Trevor Project. They help LGBTQ youth, specifically around suicide, suicide prevention support. So it's just a way to try and help people, do our best to do what we can. But even if you can't donate, not a problem, no worries. This is just a trial run. We're seeing if this works, and it's not an issue, I promise. Even if we could get the name out there, that's helpful. But anyway, okay. As I said, stop the spiel. Okay, so Chapter 13, Not at Home. So if you remember what happened last time, right. So Bilbo and the dwarves got stuck in the secret passage. Smog outside destroyed the exit to the secret passage, so they're stuck in there with the only exit being Smog's lair. But Smog has left to go deal with the Lake Town people, who he sees. Smog thinks that they're at fault for Bilbo coming in and stealing stuff. All right. Not at home. In the meanwhile, the dwarves sat in darkness, and utter silence fell about them. They ate, little they ate and little they spoke. They could not count the passing of time, and they scarcely dared to move, for the whisper of their voices echoed and rustled in the tunnel. If they dozed, they woke still to darkness and to silence going on unbroken. At last, after days and days of waiting, as it seemed, when they had becoming choked and dazed for want of air, they could bear it no longer. They would almost have welcomed the sounds below of the dragon's return. In the silence, they feared some cunning devilry of his, but they could not sit there forever. Thorin spoke. "Let us try the door," he said. "I must feel the wind on my face soon or die. I think I would rather be smashed by Smog in the open than suffocate in here." So several dwarves got up and groped back to where the door had been, but they found that the upper end of the tunnel had been shattered and blocked with broken rock. Neither the key nor the magic it had once obeyed would ever open that door again. "We're trapped," they groaned. "This is the end. We shall die here." But somehow, just when the dwarves were the most despairing, Bilbo felt a strange lightening in his heart, as if a heavy weight had gone from under his waistcoat. Come, he said. "Where there's life, there's hope, as my father used to say, and third time pays for all. I am going down the tunnel once again. I've been down that way twice when I knew there was a dragon at the other end, so I will risk a third visit when I am no longer sure. Anyway, the only way out is down, and I think this time you had better all come with me." In desperation, they agreed, and Thorin was the first to go forward by Bilbo's side. "Do be careful," whispered the hobbit, "and as quiet as you can be. There may be no Smog at the bottom, but then again, there may be. So let's not take unnecessary risks." Down, down they went. The dwarves could not, of course, compare with the hobbit in real stealth, and they made a deal of puffing and shuffling, and echoes magnified alarmingly, but every now and then Bilbo, in fear, stopped and listened, and not a sound stirred below. Near the bottom, as well as he could judge, Bilbo slipped on the ring and went on ahead, but he did not need it. The darkness was complete. They were all invisible, ring or no ring. In fact, so black was the hobbit that the hobbit came to the opening unexpectedly, put his hand in the air, and stumbled forwards and rolled headlong into the hall. There he lay, face down on the floor, and dared not get up or hardly even breathe. But nothing moved. There was not a gleam of light, unless, as it seemed to him, when at last he slowly raised his head, there was a pale white glint far above him off in the gloom. But certainly it was not the spark of dragon fire, although the worm stench was heavy in the place and the taste of vapor was on his tongue. At length, Mr. Baggins could bear it no longer. "Confound you, Smog, you worm!" he squeaked aloud. "Stop playing hide and seek. Give me a light and then eat me if you can catch me." Faint echoes ran around the unseen hall, but there was no answer. Bilbo got up and found he did not know in what direction to turn. I wonder what on earth Smog is playing at, he said. He's not home today or tonight or whatever it is, I do believe. If Oin and Gloin had not lost their tinderboxes, perhaps we can make a little light and have a look around before our luck turns. Light, he cried. Can anybody make a light? The dwarves, of course, were very alarmed when Bilbo fell forward down the step with a bump into the hall, and they sat huddled where he had left them at the end of the tunnel. They hissed when they heard his voice, and though that helped the hobbit find out where they were, it was some time before he could get anything else out of them. In the end, Bilbo actually began to stomp on the floor and screamed out, "Light!" at the top of his shrill voice. Thorin gave way, and Oin and Gloin were sent back for their bundles at the top of the tunnel. After a while, a twinkling gleam showed them returning, Oin with a small pine torch alight in his hand, and Gloin with a bundle of potato. Hey, what do you want? You spilled my tea, buddy. Why'd you spill my tea? Yeah? Yeah? That is your toy, you're right. I love how he grabs the toy like, I'm not doing anything. I don't know what you're talking about. Hey, what do you want? What do you want? I see you're writing. What do you want? What do you want? Sorry, we're going on another expedition to figure out what dog wants. What do you want, Potato? What do you want? What do you want? What do you want? I know. Show me what you want. I know you. I love you, Potato. But believe it or not, I have other things to do. Yeah. That do not require potatoes. No, they don't. No, they don't. To be fair, he did keep his side of the bargain longer than I thought he would. And while that's not saying a whole lot, for him that is saying something. Hey, clean up this tea that's spilled underneath my coaster here, so that's helpful. All right, clean off the desk. I mean, the desk is dirty enough, you know. Trying not to get that on my desk mat. Okay, there we go. Man, this desk is so old. This is my childhood desk that I had. Painted white. It's I mean, it's solid wood. Physically, it's in good shape, but yeah, it's definitely a little dirty and scuffed up. But anyway, where were we? Right. So sorry about that. Let's see here. Right. So Bilbo is finally getting mad at the dwarves. After a while, a twinkling gleam showed them returning. Oin with a small pitch torch alight in his hand, and Gloin with a bundle of others under his arm. Quickly, Bilbo trotted to the door and took the torch, but he could not persuade the dwarves to light the others or to come and join him yet. As Thorin carefully explained, Mr. Baggins was still officially their expert burglar and investigator. If he was asked to risk a light, that was his affair. They would wait in the tunnel for his report, so they sat near the door and watched. They saw the little shape of the hobbit start across the floor, holding his tiny light aloft every now and then. When he was still near enough, they caught a glint and tinkle as he stumbled in some golden thing. The light grew small as he wandered away into the vast hall, and then it began to rise, dancing into the air. Bilbo was climbing the great mound of treasure. Soon he stood up on the top and still went on. Then they saw him halt and stoop for a moment, but they did not know the reason. It was the Arkenstone, the heart of the mountain, so Bilbo guessed from Thorin's description. But indeed, there could not be two such gems, even in so marvelous a hoard, even in all the world. Ever as he climbed, the same white gleam had shone before him and drawn his feet towards it. Slowly it grew to a little globe of pallid light. Now as he came near, it was tinged with flickering sparkle of many colors at the surface, reflected and splintered from the wavering light of the torch. At last he looked down upon it, and he caught his breath. The great jewel shone before his feet with its own inner light, and yet, cut and fashioned by the dwarves who had dug it from the heart of the mountain long ago, it took all of the light that fell upon it and changed it into 10,000 sparks of white radiance, shot with glints of rainbow. Suddenly, Bilbo's arms went towards it, drawn by its enchantment. His small hand would not close about it, for it was large and heavy gem, but he lifted it, shut his eyes, and put it in his deepest pocket. Now I am a burglar indeed, he thought. But I suppose I must tell the dwarves about it sometime. They did say I could pick and choose my own share, and I think I'd choose this if they took all the rest. All the same, he had an uncomfortable feeling, and the picking and choosing had not really meant to include this marvelous gem, and that trouble would yet come of it. Now he went down again. Down the other side of the great mound he climbed, and the spark of his torch vanished from sight the watching dwarves. But soon they saw it far away in the distance again. Bilbo was crossing the floor of the hall. He went on until he came to the great doors at the far side, and there a draught of air refreshed him, but it almost puffed out the light. He peeped timidly through and caught a glimpse of the great passages and of dim belongings of the wide stairs going up into the gloom. And still there was no sight or sound of Smaug. He was just going to turn and go back when a black shape swooped at him and brushed his face. He squeaked and started to stumble backwards and fell. His torch dropped head downward and went out. Only a bat, I suppose. And hope, he said miserably. What am I going to do? Which way is east, south, north, or west? Thorin, Balin, Oin, Gloin, Philly, Killy, he cried as loud as he could. It seemed a thin little noise in the wide blackness. The light's gone out. Someone come and find and help me. For a moment, his courage had failed altogether. Faintly, the dwarves heard his small cries, although the only word they could catch was, help. Now, what on earth has happened, said Thorin. Certainly not the dragon, or he would not go on squeaking. They waited a moment or two. Still there was no dragon noises, no sound at all, in fact, but Bilbo's distant voice. Come, one of you get another light or two, Thorin ordered. It seems we've got to go and help our burglar. It's about our turn to help, said Balin, and I am quite willing to go. Anyway, I expect it is safe for the moment. Gloin lit several more torches, and they all crept out one by one and then went along the wall as they met Bilbo himself coming back towards them. His wits had quickly returned as soon as he saw the twinkle of their lights. Only a bat and a dropped torch, nothing worse, he said in answer to their questions. Though they were much relieved, they were inclined to be grumpy at his frightening for nothing. But what would they have said if he had told them at that moment about the Arkenstone? I do not know. The mere fleeting glimpses of treasure which they had caught as they went along had rekindled all the fire of their dwarfish hearts. And when the heart of a dwarf, even the most respectable, is wakened by gold and by jewels, he grows suddenly bold and may become fierce. The dwarves, indeed, no longer needed any urging. All were now eager to explore the hall while they had the chance, and willing to believe that for the present Smaug was away from home. Each now gripped a lighted torch as they gazed first to one side and then to the other. They forgot fear and even caution. They spoke aloud and cried to one another as they lifted old treasures from the mound or from the wall and held them in the light, caressing and fingering them. Philly and Killy were in almost a merry mood, and finding still hanging there many golden harps strung with silver, they took them and struck them, and being magical, and also untouched by the dragon, who had small interest in music, they were still in tune. The dark hall was filled with a melody that had long been silent, but most of the dwarfs were more practical. They gathered gems and stuffed their pockets and let what they could not carry fall through their fingers with a sigh. Thorin was not the least among these, but he searched from side to side for something which he could not find. It was the Arkenstone, but he spoke of it yet to no one. Now the dwarves took down mail and weapons from the walls and armed themselves. Royal indeed did Thorin look. Excuse you? What? What? What do you want? What? What do you want? This silly dog. What do you want, buddy? What do you want? Tell me what you want. Yeah. You. What do you want, buddy? Buddy, you gotta learn to calm down. I know, it's okay. Hey. Hey there, Bilbo. Bilbo Puppin, stop it. What do you want? What do you want, Mr. Potato? Yes, you have my attention. What do you want? Tell me what you want. Besides attention. He always wants attention. What else would you like? Hey. Stop that. Potato, what do you want? What? You've had food. You can go outside. When you're at your next stopping point, if you could come and say hi to him, I'm sure he would appreciate it. Stay there. Closing the door. Fucking dog. We had to close the door. Hold on 1 second. I have transferred the curse to B. Give me 1 second to help. This dog can cause chaos anywhere. Don't just lay on my bed like you didn't do anything. Direct quote. Don't just lay on the bed like you didn't do anything wrong. Oh, potato. Ah. Everything requires all dogs. All right. If this dog wants to shower. Anyway, he does not want to shower. Anyway, let's keep going. We try and provide some levity through comedic canines around here. Okay. Now the dwarves took down mail and weapons from the walls and armed themselves. Royal indeed did Thorin look, clad in a coat of gold-plated rings with silver-hafted axe at his belt, crusted with scarlet stones. "Mr. Baggins," he cried, "here is our first payment of your reward. Cast off your old coat and put on this." With that, he helped Bilbo in a small coat of mail wrought for some young elf prince long ago. It was of silver steel, which the elves called mithril, and it went with a belt of pearls and crystals. A light helm of a figured leather, straightened beneath hoops of steel and studded about the brim with white gems, was set upon the hobbit's head. "I feel magnificent," he thought, "but I expect I look rather absurd. How would they laugh at me on the hill at home? Still, I wish there was a looking glass handy." All the same, Mr. Baggins kept his head more clear of bewitchment of the hoard than the dwarves did. Long before the dwarves were tired of examining the treasures, he became wary of it and sat down on the floor. He began to wonder nervously what the end of all this would be. "I would give a good many of these precious goblets," he thought, "for a drink of something tearing out of one of Bjorn's wooden bowls." All right, 1 second. Hold on. We're dogging again. We're dogging. Be right back. We're dogging. We're dogging. Okay. Dog has been successfully ejected from both rooms. So let's see how this goes. So keep your ear out for any whining from the dog. I'm sure you'll hear it. Where are we? Right. "I would give a good many of these precious goblets," he thought, "for a drink of something cheering out of one of Bjorn's wooden bowls." "Thorin," he cried aloud, "what's next? We are armed, but what good is any armor? What good has any armor ever been against Smaug the Dreadful? This treasure is not yet won back. We are not looking for gold yet, but a way of escape. We have tempted luck too long." You speak the truth," answered Thorin, recovering his wits. Let's go. I will guide you. Not in 1,000 years should I forget the ways of this place." Then he hailed all the others, and they gathered together, and holding the torches above their heads, passed through the gaping doors, not without many a backward glance of longing. Their glittering mail they had covered again with their old cloaks and their bright helms with their tattered hoods, and one by one they walked behind Thorin, a line of little lights in the darkness that halted often, listening in fear once more for any rumor of the dragon's coming. Though all the old adornments were long mouldered and destroyed, and though all was befouled and blasted with the comings and goings of the monster, Thorin knew every passage and every turn. They climbed long stairs and turned and went down wide echoing ways and turned again and climbed yet more stairs and yet more stairs again. These were smooth, cut of the living rock, broad and fair, and up the dwarves went, and they met no sign of any living thing, only furtive shadows that fled from the approach of the torches fluttering in the drafts. The steps were not made all the same for hobbit legs, and Bilbo was just feeling that he could not go on any longer when suddenly the roof sprang high and far beyond the reach of their torchlight. A white glimmer could be seen coming through an opening far above, and the air smelt sweeter. Before them, the light came dimly through the great doors that hung twisted on their hinges and half-burnt. "This is the great chamber of Thror," said Thorin, "the hall of feasting and of council." Not far off now is the front gate. They passed through the ruined chamber. Tables were rotting there. Chairs and benches were laying there overturned, charred, and decaying. Skulls and bones were upon the floor, among the flagons and bowls and broken drinking horns and dust. As they came through yet more doors and further end, a sound of water fell upon their ears, and the gray light grew suddenly more full. "This is the birth of the running river," said Thorin. "From here it hastens to the gate. Let us follow it." Out of a dark opening in the wall of rock, there issued a boiling water, and it flowed swirling in a narrow channel, carved and made straight and deep by the cunning of ancient hands. Beside it ran a stone-paved road, wide enough for many men abreast. Swiftly along this they ran, and around a wide, sweeping turn, and behold, before them stood the broad light of day. In front there rose a tall arch, still showing the fragments of old carven work within, worn and splintered and blackened though it was. A misty sun sent its pale light between the arms of the mountain, and beams of gold fell on the pavement of the threshold. A whirl of bats, frightened from their slumber by their smoking torches, flurried over them as they sprang forward. Their feet slithered on the stones, rubbed smooth and slimed by the passing of the dragon. Now before them the water fell noisily outward and foamed down towards the valley. They flung their pale torches on the ground and stood gazing out with dazzled eyes. They had come to the front gate and were looking upon Dale. "Well," said Bilbo, I never expected to be looking out of this door, and I never expected to be so pleased to see the sun again and to feel the wind on my face, but this wind is cold." It was a bitter easterly wind blew with a thread of oncoming winter. It swirled over and around the arms of the mountain into the valley and sighed among the rocks. After their long time in the stewing depths of the dragon-haunted caverns, they shivered in the sun. Suddenly Bilbo realized that he was not only tired, but very hungry indeed. "It seems to be late morning," said he, "and so I suppose is more or less breakfast time, if there is any breakfast to have, but I don't feel that Smaug's front doorstep is the safest place for a meal. Let's go somewhere where we can sit in quiet for a bit." "Quite right," said Balin. "I think I know which way we should go. We ought to make for the old lookout post, southwest corner of the mountain." "How far is that?" asked the hobbit. 5 hours' march, I should think. It will be rough going from the road. The roads from the gate along the left edge of the stream seemed all broken up, but look down there. The river loops suddenly to the east across Dale in front of the ruined town. At that point, there once was a bridge leading to a steep stairs that climbed up the right bank, and so was a road running towards Ravenhill. There is, or was, a path that left the road and climbed up to the post. A hard climb, too, even if the old steps are still there. "Dear me," grumbled the hobbit. "More walking and more climbing without breakfast. I wonder how many breakfasts and other meals we have missed inside that nasty, clockless, timeless hole." As a matter of fact, 2 nights and the day had gone by, and not altogether without food, since the dragon smashed the magic door, but Bilbo had quite lost count, and it might have been 1 night or a week of nights for all he could tell. Come," said Thorin, laughing. His spirits had begun to rise again, and he rattled the precious stones in his pockets. "Don't call my place a nasty hole. You wait till it's been cleaned and redecorated." "That won't be till Smaug's dead," said Bilbo glumly. "And in the meanwhile, where is he?" I would give a good breakfast to know. I hope he's not up the mountain looking down on us. That idea disturbed the dwarves mightily, and they quickly decided that Bilbo and Balin were right. We must move away from here, said Dory. I feel as if his eyes are in the back of my head. Cold and lonesome place, said Bombor. There we may drink, but I see no sign of food. A dragon would be hungry in such parts. Come on, cried the others. Let us follow Balin's path. Under the rocky wall to the right, there was no path, and so they trudged among the stones on the left side of the river, and the emptiness and the desolation soon sobered even Thorin again. The bridge that Balin had spoke of, they found long fallen, and most of its stones were now only boulders in the shallow, noisy stream, but they forded the water without much difficulty and found the ancient steps and climbed the high bank. After going a short way, they struck the old road, and before long came to a deep dell sheltered among the rocks. There they rested for a while and had such breakfast as they could, chiefly cram and water. If you want to know what cram is, I can only say that I don't know the recipe, but it's biscuit-ish, keeps good indefinitely, is supporting to be sustaining, and certainly not entertaining, in fact, being very uninteresting, except as a chewing exercise. It was made by the lakemen for long journeys. After that, they went on again, and now the road struck westward and left the river, and the great shoulder of the south-pointing mountain spur drew ever nearer. At length they reached the hill path and scrambled steeply up, and they plodded slowly one behind the other, till at last, late in the afternoon, they came to the top of the ridge and saw the wintry sun going downwards to the west. Here they found a flat place without a wall on three sides, but backed to the north by a rocky face, in which was an opening, like a door. From that door there was a wide view to the east and south and west. Here, said Balin, in the old days we always used to keep a watchman at that door, and stand behind that door behind leads to the rock-hewn chamber that was made here as a guard room, but there are several places like it around the mountain. But there seemed a small need for watching in the days of our prosperity, and the guards were made over-comfortable, perhaps, otherwise we might have had longer warning of the coming of the dragon, and things might have been different. Still, here we can now lie hid and sheltered for a while, and can see much without being seen. Not much use if we've been seen coming up here, said Dory, who was always looking up towards the mountain's peak as if he expected to see Smog perched like a bird on a steeple. We must take our chance of that, said Thorin. We can go no further today. Hear, hear, cried Bilbo, and flung himself onto the ground. The rock chamber there would have been room for 100, and there was a small chamber further in, more removed from the cold outside. It was quite deserted. Not even the wild animals seemed to have used it in all the days of Smog's domination. There they laid their burdens, and some threw themselves down at once and slept, and others sat near the outer door and discussed their plans. In all their talk, they came perpetually to one thing. Where was Smog? They looked west, and there was nothing. And east there was nothing, and south there was no sign of the dragon, but there was a gathering of very many birds. At that they gazed and wondered, but they came no nearer to understanding it when the first cold stars came out. Next is Chapter 14, Fire and Water. Oh. Whew. Okay, so Chapter 14. So there are a total of 19 chapters, so 5 more after this. So we have options. We can do another chapter. Let's see. It goes from 403. Oh, no, I'm sorry. See, 335 minus 322. Oh, so it's only like 13 pages. So we can do another chapter. Let's do another chapter, and then we'll look around for other things to read. All right. Chapter 14, sorry. Fire and water. Now, if you wish, like the dwarves, to hear news of Smog, you must go back again to the evening when he smashed the door and flew off in a rage 2 days before. The men of Lake Town Escaroth were mostly indoors, for the breeze was from the black east and chill. But if you were walking on the quays and watching, as they were fond of doing, and as the stars shone out from the smooth patches of the lake and as they opened in the sky, from their town, the lonely mountain was mostly screened by the low hills on the far end of the lake, through a gap in which the running river came down from the north. Only its high peak could they see in clear weather, and they looked seldom at it, for it was ominous and drear even in the light of morning. Now it was lost and gone, blotted in the dark. Suddenly, it flickered back into view. A brief glow touched it and faded. "Look," said one, "the lights again. Last night the watchman saw them start and fade from midnight until dawn. Something's happening up there." "Perhaps the king under the mountain is forging gold," said another. "It is long since we went north. It's long since he went north. It's time the songs began to prove themselves again." "Which king?" said another in a grim voice. "As like as not is the marauding fire of the dragon, the only king under the mountain we have ever known." "You always say foreboding gloomy things," said the others. "Anything from floods to poisoned fish. Think of something cheerful." Then suddenly a great light appeared on the low place in the hills at the northern end of the lake, and the northern end of the lake turned golden. "The king beneath the mountain," they shouted. "His wealth is like the sun, his silver like a fountain, his rivers golden run." Hello.
You needed some encouragement. I don't know.
Some encouragement? Egg potato.
That's not the kind of encouragement we're giving. I'm gonna go downstairs with him, so I have to let you know. Okay. Man, I wanted him to say hello to you, but not with a bite.
Yeah.
I mean, not a bite.
Yeah. A nibble of attention.
Okay. You want to go downstairs with me now? Have fun. Enjoy.
Thank you. Go hang out with mommy.
Let's go, Bubba. Yeah, let's go downstairs. You want to go?
Come on, bud.
Let's go downstairs.
Go, bud.
Go downstairs. Let's go.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Interruptions. Anyway. Then suddenly, right. "The king under the mountain," they shouted. "His wealth is like the sun, his silver like a fountain, his rivers golden run. The rivers running gold from the mountain," they cried, and everywhere windows were opening and feet were hurrying. There was once more a tremendous excitement and enthusiasm, but the grim-voiced fellow ran hotfoot to the master. "The dragon is coming, or I am a fool," he said. "Cut the bridges, to arms, to arms!" Then warning trumpets were suddenly sounded, and echoing among the rocky shores. The cheering stopped, and the joy turned to dread. So it was that the dragon did not find them quite unprepared. Before long, so great was his speed, they could see him as a spark of fire rushing towards them and growing ever huger and more bright. Not the most foolish among them doubted the prophecies had gone rather wrong. Still, they had little time. Every vessel in the town was filled with water, every warrior armed, every arrow and dart was ready, and the bridge to the land was thrown down and destroyed before the roar of Smog's terrible approach grew loud, and the lake rippled red as fire beneath the awful beating of his wings. All right, I know we're in the middle of like an exciting part, but it seems to me that when you have a dragon coming at you, flying through the air, perhaps getting rid of all your means of escape is not the greatest idea in the world, but, you know, who am I? Anyway. Amid the shrieks and wailing and shouts of men, he came over them, swept towards the bridges, and was foiled. The bridge was gone, and his enemies were on an island in deep water, too deep and dark and cool for his liking. If he had plunged into it, a vapor and steam would arise enough to cover the land in mist for days. But the lake was mightier than he. It would quench him before he could pass through. Roaring, he swept back over the town. A hail of dark arrows leapt up and snapped and rattled on his scales and jewels, and their shafts fell back, kindled by his breath, burning and hissing into the lake. No fireworks you have ever imagined equaled the sights of that night. At the twanging of the bows and the shrilling of trumpets, the dragon's wrath blazed to its height, till he was blind and mad with it. No one had dared to give him battle for many an age, nor would they have dared now if it had not been for the grim-voiced man. Bard was his name, who ran to and fro, cheering on the archers and urging the master to order them to fire the last arrow. Fire leapt from the dragon's jaws. He circled for a while high in the air above them, lighting all the lake. The trees and the shore shone like copper, like blood, with leaping shadows of dense black at their feet. And down he swooped, straight through the arrow storm, reckless in his rage, taking no heed to turn his scaly sides towards his foe, seeking only to set their town ablaze. Fire leapt from thatched hooves and wooden beam ends as he hurtled down and passed and around again, though all had been drenched with water before he came. Once more water was flung by 100 hands wherever a spark appeared. Black swirled the dragon. A sweep of his tail and a roof of the great house crumbled and smashed down. Flames unquenchable sprang high into the night. Another swoop and another and another. The house and then another sprang afire and fell, and still no arrow hindered Smog or hurt him more than a fly from the marshes. Already men were jumping into the water on every side. Women and children were being huddled into laden boats in the market pool. Weapons were flung down. There was mourning and weeping, but there was little time. There was mourning and weeping where, but a little time ago, the old songs of mirth had been sung about the dwarves. Now the men cursed their names. The master himself was turning to his great gilded boat, hoping to row away in the confusion and save himself. Soon all the town would be deserted and burned down to the surface of the lake. That was the dragon's hope. If they could all get into the boats for all he cared. There he could have his fine sport hunting them, and or they could stop till they starved. Let them try to get to land, and he would be ready. Soon he would set all the shoreland and woods ablaze, and wither every field and pasture. Just now he was enjoying the sport of town baiting more than he had enjoyed anything in years. But there was still a company of archers that held their ground among the burning houses. Their captain, Bard, grim-voiced and grim-faced, whose friends had accused him of prophesying floods and poisoned fish, though they knew his worth and courage. He was a descendant of the long line of Girion, Lord of Dale, whose wife and child had escaped down the river running from the ruin long ago. Now he shot with a great yew bow till all his arrows but one were spent. The flames were near him. His companions were leaving him. He bent his bow for the last time. Suddenly, out of the dark, something fluttered onto his shoulders. He started, but it was only an old thrush. Unafraid, it perched by his ear, and it brought him the news. Marveling, he found he could understand the tongue, for he was of the race of Dale. Wait, it said to him. The moon is rising. Look for the hollow of the left breast as he flies and turns above you. And while Bard paused to wonder, it told him tidings of the mountain and all that it had heard. Then Bard drew his bowstring to his ear. The dragon was circling back, flying low. As he came, the moon shone above the eastern shore and silvered his great wings. Arrow, said the bowman, Black Arrow, I have saved you for last. You have never failed me, and always I have recovered you. I had you for my father, and he from old. If ever you came from the forges of the true king unto the mountain, go now and speed well. The dragon swooped once more, lower than ever, and as he turned and dived down, his belly glittered white with sparkling fires of gems in the moon. but not one place. The great bow twanged. The black arrow sped straight from its string, straight for the hollow by the left breast, where the foreleg was flung wide. In it smote and vanished, barb, shaft, and feather. So fierce was its flight. With a shriek that deafened men, felled trees and split stone, Smog shot spouting into the air, turned over and over, and crashed down from on high in ruin. Full on the town he fell. His last throws splintered it to sparks and gilds. The lake roared in, a vast steam leapt up, white in the sudden dark of the moon. There was a hiss, a gushing whirl, and then silence. And that was the end of Smog and Esgaroth, but not of Bard. The waxing moon rose higher and higher, and the wind grew loud and cold. It twisted the white fog into bending pillars and hurrying clouds, and drove it off to the west to scatter in tattered shreds over the marshes before Mirkwood. Then the many boats that could be seen dotted dark on the surface of the lake. Down the wind came the voices of the people of Esgaroth, lamenting their lost town and goods and ruined houses. But they had really much to be thankful for, had they thought of it. Though it could hardly be expected they should just then. 3/4 of the people of the town had at least escaped alive. Their woods and fields and pastures and cattle and most of their boats remained undamaged, and the dragon was dead. What that meant they had not yet realized. They gathered in mournful crowds upon the western shore, shivering in the cold wind, and their first complaints and anger were against the master who had left the town so soon, while some were still willing to defend it. May have a good head for business, especially his own business, some murmured, but he is no good when anything serious happens. And they praised the courage of Bard and of his mighty last shot. If only he had not been killed today, we would make him a king, Bard the dragon shooter of the line of Girion. Alas, that he is lost. And in the very midst of their talk, a tall figure stepped from the shadows. He was drenched with water. His black hair hung wet over his face and shoulders, and a fierce light was in his eyes. Bard is not lost, he cried. He dived from Esgaroth when the enemy was slain. I am Bard of the line of Girion. I am the slayer of the dragon. King Bard! King Bard! They shouted, but the master ground his chattering teeth. Girion was the Lord of Dale, not King of Esgaroth, said he. In Lake Town we have always elected masters from among the old and wise, and have not endured the rule of more fighting men. Let King Bard go back to his own kingdom, Dale, now that it is freed by his valor, and nothing hinders his return. Any that wish can go with him, if they prefer the cold stone under the shadow of the mountain to the green shores of the lake. The wise will stay here and hope to rebuild the town and enjoy again its time of peace and riches. We will have King Bard, the people near their hand shouted in reply. We have had enough of old men and money counters, and the people further took up the cry. Up the bowmen, down the money bags, till the clamor echoed along the shore. I am the last man to undervalue Bard the bowman, said the master warily, for Bard now still stood close beside him. He has tonight earned an eminent place in the roll of benefactors of our town, and he is worthy of many imperishable songs. But why, old people, and here the master rose to his feet and spoke very loud and clear, why do I get the blame? For what fault am I to be deposed? Who aroused the dragon from his slumber, I might ask? Who obtained of us the rich gifts and ample help, and led us to believe the old songs would come true? Who played on our soft hearts and our pleasant fancies? What sort of gold have they sent down the river towards us? Dragon fire and ruin. From whom should we claim our recompense of damage and aid for our widows and orphans? As you see, the master had not got his position for nothing. The result of his words was that for the moment the people quite forgot their idea of a new king and turned angry thoughts towards Thorin and his company. Wild and bitter words were shouted from many sides, and some of those who had before sung the old sounds the loudest, were now heard to loudly cry that the dwarves had stirred the dragon up against them deliberately. Fools, said Bard, why waste such words in wrath? on those unhappy creatures. Doubtless they perished first in the fire before Smog came to us. Even as he was speaking, the thought came into his heart of the fabled treasure of the mountain lying without guard or owner, and he fell suddenly silent. He thought of the master's words, and of Dale rebuilt and filled with golden bells if he could but find the men. At length he spoke again. It is no time for angry words, master, or for considering weighty plans of change. There is work to do. I serve you still, though after a while I may think again of your words and go north with any that will follow me. Then he strode off to help in the ordering of the camps and the care of the sick and wounded. But the master scowled at his back as he went, and remained sitting on the ground. He thought much, but said little, unless it was to call loudly for men to bring him fire and food. Now everywhere Bard went, he found talk running like fire among the people concerning the vast treasure that was now unguarded. Men spoke of recompense for all the harm that they would soon get from it, and wealth over and to spare by which they would buy rich things from the south. And it cheered them greatly in their plight. That was as well, for the night was bitter and miserable. Shelters could be contrived for few, the master had one, and there was little food, even the master went short. Many took ill of wet and cold and sorrow that night, and afterwards died, who escaped uninjured from the ruin of the town. And in the days that followed, there was much sickness and great hunger. Meanwhile, Bard took the lead and ordered things as he wished, although always in the master's name, and he had a hard task to govern the people and direct preparations for their protection and housing. Probably most of them would have perished in the winter that now hurried after autumn if help had not been at hand. But help came swiftly, for Bard at once had speedy messengers sent up the river to the forest to ask for the aid of the king of the elves of the wood, and these messengers found a host already on the move, although then it was only the third day after the fall of Smog. The Elven King had received news from his own messengers and from the birds that loved his folk and already knew much of what had happened. Very great indeed was the commotion among all things that dwelt with wings that dwelt on the borders of the desolation of the dragon. The air was filled with circling flocks, and their swift flying messengers flew here and there across the sky. Above the borders of the forest, there was whistling, crying, and piping. Far over Mirkwood, tidings spread. Smog is dead. Leaves rustled, and startled ears were lifted. Even before the Elf King rode forth, the news had passed west, right to the pine woods of the Misty Mountains. Bjorn had heard it from his wooden house, and the goblins were at council in their caves. That will be the last we shall hear of Thorin Oakenshield, I fear, said the king. He would have done better to have remained my guest. It's an ill wind all the same, he added, that blows no one any good. For he too had not forgotten the legend of the wealth of Thror. So it was that Bard's messengers found him now marching with the many spearmen and bowmen, and crows were gathering thick above him. For they thought that war was awakening again, such as had not been known in these parts for a long age. But the king, when he received the prayers of Bard, had pity, for he was a lord of good and a kindly people, and so turning his march, which had been at first directed towards the mountain, he hastened now down the river to Long Lake. He had not boats or rafts enough for his host, and they were forced to go the slower way by foot. But great store of goods he sent ahead by water. Still, the elves are light-footed, and though they were not in those days much used to marches in the treacherous lands between the forest and the lake, their going was swift. Only 5 days after the death of the dragon, they came upon the shores and looked on the ruins of the town. Their welcome was good, as may be expected, and the men and the master were ready to make any bargain for the future return of the Elf King's aid. Their plans were soon made. With the women and children, the old and the unfit, the master remained behind, and with him were some of the men of crafts and many of the skilled elves, and they busied themselves felling trees and collecting timber sent down from the forest. Then they set about raising many huts on the shores against the oncoming winter. And also under the master's direction, they began planning a new town designed more fair and large than ever before, but not in the same place. They were moved northward, higher up the shore, for ever after they had a dread of the water where the dragon lay. He would never again return to his golden bed, but was stretched cold as stone, twisted among the floors of the shallows. There for an age his huge bones could be seen in calm weather, amidst the ruined piles of the old town. But few dared to cross the cursed spot. None dared dive into the shivering water to recover the precious stones that fell from his rotting corpse. But the men of arms who were still able, and most of the Elf King's array, got ready to march north to the mountain. It was thus that in the 11 days from the ruin of the town, the head of their host passed the rock gates at the end of the lake and came to the desolate lands. Okay, so that was chapter 14. The smog is no more, and the scheming has begun. That did not take long. So, we will go to other things. Let's see. Let's see. Excellent. Let us find a short story to read, shall we? If anyone has a particular interest, they can feel free to post the idea. Frank L. Baum, Ambrose Bierce. We've done a Bierce recently. Ray Bradbury. Stephen Crane. Philip K. Dick. What's wrong with Philip K. Dick? Hanging Stranger. Beyond lies the wub. The eyes have it. None of those. Let's see here. Library of Short Stories. Let's check this one out. I mean, Poe is always a good choice. Classics. The Telltale Heart. We read that one. Scandal in Bohemia by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. If we wanted to get into the Sherlock Holmes, let's see. Let's get 10 to 20 years. Let's see. Guy Fasson. Cool Air. Oh, that's Lovecraft, yeah. Bottomless Grave. In the Vault. That sounds silly. See, Demon of the Flower. I have an idea. Yeah. Oh, geez, what is it? Short. Oh man, who is it? I have the. Is it Edna St. Vincent Millay? Hold on. Edna St. Vincent Millay. No, you. Swan. Is it Swans? Wild Swans. No, not that one. It's not Edna St. Vincent Millay, is it? It's someone else. Not Swans. Oopsies. That one. Essays, maybe? Oh, those are all poems. What is the one I'm thinking of? Zephyr, do you know what I'm thinking of? The Cask of Amontillado? The Cask of Amontillado? Okay. That's always a good one. The Cask of Amontillado. Okay. Let's see here. Let's see how this comes across. Yes. I think we read this a little while ago, but we can read it again because it's Poe, and Poe is wonderful. Okay. The Cask of Amontillado by Edgar Allan Poe. The 1,000 injuries of Fortunato I had borne as best I could, but when he ventured upon insult, I vowed revenge. You, who so well know the nature of my soul, will not suppose, however, that I gave utterance to a threat. At length, I would be avenged. This was a point definitively settled, but the very definitiveness with which it was resolved precluded the idea of risk. I must not only punish, but punish with impunity. A wrong is unredressed when retribution overtakes its redresser. It is equally unredressed when the avenger fails to make himself felt as such to him that has done the wrong. It must be understood that neither by word nor deed had I given Fortunato cause to doubt my will. I continued, as was my wont, to smile in his face, and he did not perceive that my smile now was at the thought of his immolation. He had a weak point, this Fortunato, although in other regards he was a man to be respected, even feared. He prided himself on his connoisseurship of wine. Few Italians have the true virtuoso spirit. For the most part, their enthusiasm is adopted to suit the time and opportunity to practice imposture upon the British or Austrian millionaires in painting. In painting and gemmery, Fortunato, like his countrymen, was a quack. But in the matter of old wines, he was sincere. In this respect, I did not differ from him materially. I was skillful in the Italian vintages myself, and bought largely whenever I could. It was about dusk, one evening during the supreme madness of the carnival season, that I encountered my friend. He accosted me with excessive warmth, for he had been drinking much. The man wore motley. He had on a tight-fitting party-striped dress, and his head was surmounted by the conical cap and bells. I was so pleased to see him, I thought I never should have done wringing his hand. I said to him, "My dear Fortunato, you are luckily met. How remarkably well you are looking today. But I have received a pipe of what passes for an Amontillado, and I have my doubts." "Oh," said he, "an Amontillado? A pipe? Impossible. In the middle of the carnival?" "I have my doubts," I replied, "and I was silly enough to pay the full Amontillado price without consulting you in the matter. You were not to be found, and I was fearful of losing a bargain." "Amontillado. I have my doubts. Amontillado. And I must satisfy them. Amontillado. As you are engaged, I am on my way to Lucrece. If there is anyone who has a critical turn as he will tell me, Lucrece could not tell an Amontillado from sherry. Yet some fools will have it that his taste is a match for your own. Come, let us go." "Whither?" "To your vaults." "My friend, no, I do not wish to impose upon your good nature. I perceive you have an engagement. Lucrece." "I have no engagement." "Come." "My friend, no, it is not the engagement, but the severe cold with which I perceive you are afflicted. The vaults are insufferably damp. They're crusted with nitre. Let us go nevertheless. The cold is, is merely nothing. Amontillado. You have been imposed upon. As for Lucchese, he cannot distinguish sherry from Amontillado. Thus speaking, Fortunato possessed himself of my arm, and putting on a mask of black silk and drawing roquelaire, what is that? A knee-length cloak worn especially in the 18th and 19th century, also spelled roquelaire. Okay, anyway. Closely about my person, I suffered him to hurry me to my palazzo. There were no attendants at home. They had absconded to make merry in the hour of the time. In honor of the time, I had told them that I should not return until morning, and given them explicit orders not to stir from the house. These orders were sufficient, I knew, to ensure their immediate disappearance, one and all, as soon as my back was turned. I took from their sconces 2 flambeaux, and giving one to Fortunato, bowed him through several suites of rooms to the archway that led into the vaults. I passed down a long and winding staircase, requesting him to be cautious as he followed. We came at length to the foot of the descent, and stood together upon the damp ground of the catacombs of the Montresors. The gait of my friend was unsteady, and the bells upon his cap jingled as he strode. The pipe, said he. It is further on, said I, but observe the white webwork which gleams from these cavern walls. He turned towards me and looked into my eyes with 2 filmy orbs that distilled the rheum of intoxication. Nitre? He asked at length. Nitre, I replied. How long have you had that cough? My poor friend found it impossible to reply for many minutes. Nothing, he said at last. Come, said I with decision. We will go back. Your health is precious. You are rich, respected, admired, beloved. You are happy as once I was. You are a man to be missed. For me, it is no matter. We will go back. You will be ill, and I cannot be responsible. Besides, there is crazy. Enough, said he. A cough is a mere nothing. It will not kill me. I shall not die of a cough. True, I replied. And indeed, I had no intention of alarming you unnecessarily, but you should use all proper caution. A draught of this Medoc will defend us from the damps. Here I knocked off the neck of a bottle, which I drew from a long row of its fellows that lay upon the mold. Drink, I said, presenting him the wine. He raised it to his lips with a leer. He paused and nodded to me familiarly while his bells jingled. I drink, he said, to the buried that repose around us. And I to your long life. He again took my arm, and we proceeded. These vaults, he said, are extensive. The Montresors, I replied, were a great and numerous family. Forget your arms. A huge human foot door on a field azure. The foot crushes a serpent rampant whose fangs are embedded in the heel. And the motto, Nemo me impune lecet. No one provokes me with impunity. This motto appears on the Royal Arms of Scotland. I did not know that. Huh. Good, he said. The wine sparkled in his eyes, and the bells jangled. My own fancy grew warm with the Medoc. We passed through long walls of piled skeletons with casks and puncheons intermingling into the inmost recesses of the catacombs. I paused again, and this time I made bold to seize Fortunato by the arm above the elbow. The nitre, I said, see, it increases. It hangs like moss in the vaults. We are below the river's bed. The drops of moisture trickle among the bones. Come, we will go back ere it is too late. Your cough, it is nothing. Let us go on. But first, another draught of your Medoc. I broke and reached him a flagon of de Grave, a French red or white wine. Okay. He emptied it at a breath. His eyes flashed with a fierce light. He laughed and threw the bottle upward with a gesticulation I did not understand. I looked at him in surprise. He repeated the movement, a grotesque one. You do not comprehend, he said. Not I replied. Then you are not of the Brotherhood. How? You are not of the Masons. Yes, yes, said I. You? Impossible. A Mason? A Mason, I replied. A sign, he said. A sign! It is this, I answered, producing from beneath the folds of my reliquary a trowel. You jest, he exclaimed, recoiling a few paces. But let us proceed to the Amontillado. Be it so, I said, replacing the tool beneath my cloak, and again offering him my arm. He leaned upon it heavily. We continued our route in search of the Amontillado. We passed through a range of low arches, descended, passed on, and descended again, arriving at a deep crypt in which the foulness of the air caused our flambeau to glow rather than flame. At the most remote end of the crypt, there appeared another less spacious. Its walls had been lined with human remains piled to the vault overhead, in the fashion of the great catacombs of Paris. 3 sides of this interior crypt were ornamented in this manner. From the 4th side, the bones had been thrown down and lay promiscuously upon the earth, forming at one point a mound of some size. Within the wall, thus exposed by the displacing of bones, we perceived a still interior crypt or recess, in depth about 4 feet, in width 3, in height 6 or 7. It seemed to have been constructed for no special use within but itself, but formed merely the interval between 2 colossal supports of the roof of the catacombs, and was backed by one of their circumscribing walls of solid granite. It was in vain that Fortunato, uplifting his dull torch, endeavored to pry into the depth of the recess. Its termination, the feeble light did not enable us to see. Proceed, I said. Herein is the Amontillado. As for Lucchese, he is an ignoramus, interrupted my friend, and he stepped unsteadily forwards, while I followed immediately at his heels. In an instant, he had reached the extremity of the niche, and, finding his progress arrested by the rock, stood stupidly bewildered. A moment more, and I had fettered him to the granite. In its surface were 2 iron staples, a distance of about 2 feet horizontally. From these depended a short chain, from the other a padlock. Throwing the links about his waist, it was but the work of a few seconds to secure it. He was too much astounded to resist. Withdrawing the key, I stepped back from the recess. Pass your hand, I said, over the wall. You cannot help but feeling the nitre. Indeed, it is very damp. Once more, let me implore you to return. No? Then I must positively leave you, but I must first render to you all the little assistance in my power. The Amontillado, ejaculated my friend, not yet recovered his astonishment. True, I replied, the Amontillado. As I said these words, I busied myself in the pile of bones of which I had before spoken. Throwing them aside, I soon uncovered a quantity of building stone and mortar. With these materials, with the aid of my trowel, I began vigorously to wall up the entrance of the niche. I had scarcely laid the first tier of the masonry when I discovered that the intoxication of Fortunato had, in a great measure, worn off. The earliest indication I had of this was a low, moaning cry from the depths of the recess. It was not the cry of a drunken man. There was then a long and obstinate silence. I laid the 2nd tier, and the 3rd, and the 4th. Then I heard furious vibrations of the chain. The noise lasted for several minutes, during which I might hearken with more satisfaction. I ceased my labor and sat down upon the bones. When at last the clinking subsided, I resumed the trowel and finished without interruption the 5th, 6th, and 7th tier. The wall was now nearly at level with my breast. I again paused, holding the flambeau above the masonwork, and threw a few feeble rays upon the figure within. A succession of loud and shrill screams, bursting suddenly from the throat of the chained form, seemed to thrust me violently back. For a brief moment, I hesitated. I trembled. Unsheathing my rapier, I began to grope about with it in the recess. But the thought of an instant reassured me. I placed my hand upon the solid fabric of the catacombs and felt satisfied. I reapproached the wall. I replied to the yell of him who clamored. I re-echoed. I added. I surpassed them in volume and in strength. I did this, and the clamor grew still. It was now midnight. My task was drawing to a close. I'd completed the 8th, the 9th, and the 10th tier. I'd finished a portion of the last and the 11th. There remained but a single stone to be fitted and plastered in. I struggled with its weight. I placed it partially in the destined position. But now there came out of the niche a low laugh that erected the hairs upon my head. It was succeeded by a sad voice, which I had difficulty in recognizing that of the noble Fortunato. The voice said, a very good joke indeed. An excellent jest. We will have many a rich laugh about it at the piazza. Over our wine. The Amontillado, I said. Yes, the Amontillado. But is it not getting late? Will they not be waiting for us in the palazzo, the Lady Fortunato and the rest? Let us be gone. Yes, I said, let us be gone. For the love of God, Montresor. Yes, said I, for the love of God. These words I hearkened in vain for a reply. I grew impatient. I called aloud, Fortunato! No answer. I called again, Fortunato! No answer still. I thrust a torch through the remaining aperture and let it fall within. There came forth in return only a jingling of bells. My heart grew sick. It was the dampness of the catacombs that made it so. I hastened to make an end of my labor. I forced the last stone into its position. I plastered up against the new masonry. I re-erected the old rampart of bones. For half of a century, no mortal has disturbed them. In pace requisat. Rest in peace. Well, I have been delivered a wonderful gift of red pepper. Raw red pepper. Oh, red pepper is good. At any rate, it's such a great story. Such a fun story. Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's one of the great ones. So I remember I had a set of cassettes of what's his name? Price. Stephen Price? No, the who is the actor? Vincent Price. Vincent Price reading a bunch of Poe stories, including this one. Those are wonderful. I love those. Okie dokie. Yeah, so I think next time I'm gonna call it here, at least for now, to let my voice rest. Some of those costs were real. Next time I think we'll do, yeah, we'll try Sherlock Holmes for something a little different on the next one. I think that will be a lot of fun. Excuse me, Sherlock Holmes are always great. And we'll figure out what we'll read next. We are getting towards the end of The Hobbit. So we'll figure out a next target after that. But potentially Beowulf, if I can find a translation that I like. Otherwise, we'll figure something out. Maybe something else in the fantasy genre. Maybe something in another one. Yeah. But yes, Sherlock Holmes will be a good thing to start up because there are essentially an infinite number of them. So they're always good for a short read. So anyway, thank you all to everyone who who has spent time here. If you give me 1 second, I am going to see if anyone else is online that we can raid. Let's see. Let's go to browse. And let's see if there's anyone else in the writing and reading category. Let's see. Let's see. Who can we raid? Let's go look into science and technology. Nothing really there. One last look. We'll take a scan at the art section and see if anyone is doing fun things here. No one that I really know, unfortunately. So we could just raid a random person, or we could just let it go. Let's see. I think I'm too much of a wuss to raid a random person, so I believe I will let you go. It's too bad Builty isn't working again. Anyway, okay. Yes, so I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for coming to the stream, for enjoying it. As we continue our streaming set for this this donation stream charity thing, whatever you want to call it. If you know anyone who has interest in this subject and would like to find a mechanism of donation, Twitch does not take any of the donation. This is done through Twitch, so they do not take any of the donation. So if you know anyone who has the means and the interest in donating to this cause, we will continue to be having this set up. We'll do it for at least through this week and maybe through next week as well. I'm hoping to set up a nice collab stream with some people. It looks like potentially Sunday, but more on that to come later. Yeah. In the meantime, thank you again for joining in. And I hope you all have a wonderful evening, or a wonderful night, or a wonderful morning, depending on where you are, or all of the above. Yep. I will see you all on the next go round. Thank you so much, Mark. If I get horrifically bored tonight, I might end up streaming some games later on, but for now, I think this is where we'll call it. So have a good evening, and I will see you tomorrow. Goodbye.